Welcome to the Environmental Leadership Chronicles, a podcast brought to you by the California Association of Environmental Professionals. In this episode, we feature Tania Treis and Susanne Heim, co-owners and principals of Panorama Environmental. Tania is the founding principal of Panorama and specializes in CEQA, NEPA, and permitting compliance. She leads Panorama's services in solar energy, fire and fuels, and water utility sectors. Tania is recognized for her strategic insight and creativity in finding solutions for complex projects and programs. Her vision for Panorama has been to create a company that serves clients with a highly focused and intelligent team of professionals who care deeply about their work and bring success to every project while also being a great place to work. As an owner of Panorama, Tania oversees the company's overall business strategy, finances, and information technology. Susanne is a principal and co-owner of Panorama with 20 years of project and program management experience in the environmental field. Susanne has led CEQA, NEPA, and permitting efforts for electric utility, solar, geothermal, water utility, and watershed restoration projects throughout California, Nevada, and internationally. She's recognized for her team leadership and ability to motivate teams to achieve goals. Susanne currently leads Panorama's services in the geothermal, electric utility, and water resource sectors. Susanne's role as an owner includes leading company operations and staff development. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, I'm Jessa.
And I'm Laurel, and today's guests are Susanne and Tania from Panorama Environmental. So excited to have you guys. This is not our first podcast together, but it is the first for AEP. So on that note, walk us through how you're connected to the AEP organization.
Great. So we as Panorama Environmental are an environmental consulting firm, and we are AEP members. We frequently are at AEP conferences. We love all the AEP workshops. We send our employees to them. It is an organization that we are strongly connected to and are glad is in existence because it really helps with training new staff and also just sharing ideas and connecting to people who have similar mindsets.
Yeah, and we've done sessions for AP and led workshops. And so, yeah, again, it's a great organization, and being in the environmental field, makes us well tied to it.
Yeah, agreed. I have definitely participated on a webinar panel with you, Tania, for AEP. Can you remember what that was? It was like a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think it was the we'd done the Alpine County wildfire work. So it was a fire related one. Yeah.
That's right. It was the fire related one. So on that note, what drew you guys to the environmental profession? Was it wildfire planning, or how did you end up in this
Predates
space?
That.
Yeah.
Definitely predates that.
Yes, so old, predate fire.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start if that's okay. So yeah. I grew up around the environmental profession. My dad is a landscape architect, and he had an office and business at home. And so I grew up sitting at drafting tables. And this was back in the day when there were drafting tables, kind of tracing his designs and doing like start-offs on irrigation lines and just walking around the neighborhoods with my dad and him spouting off all the like Latin names of every plant that we're seeing. So it was kind of something that I was born into a little bit. And then just through, interests and hobbies, I got really into doing backpacking and being outdoors and in nature. And when I was in college, I was not studying anything in the environmental field. And my friends would tell me, you're really passionate about the environmental issues. Like you should be doing this work. And it was really funny because of course, then after I graduated and looking for a job, that's the field that I ended up into. I just kind of naturally navigated into a job that I was like, well, this looks interesting. This seems like it aligns with where my natural interests lie. And that's how I ended up in the environmental field.
And before we move on to Tania. So this is just a little throwback to our previous episode we had with Corinne Lettle-Bonine and her mom, Nancy, about the intergenerational environmental professionals and how that inspired you. So on that note, how were Thanksgiving conversations at your table? Did you guys talk about the environmental profession and all of that regularly during holidays, or what was that like?
It's funny because we didn't. And you know what's even, it's like when you think about intergenerational, so there's my dad who's a landscape architect, and then my sister for a while was also a CEQA practitioner. So right after college, she went and she started doing CEQA as well. And so we were all in the same field. But I think there was this aspect of, it's like, this is what I do at work when we're together as a family. Like we keep that separate. So we actually never really talked about work stuff when we got together for dinner.
That is unique from the Corinne and Nancy relationship, where it was, a constant. Well, that's fascinating. Thank you. And Tania, how about you? Where did you start?
Yeah, so pretty different background from Susanne, I think. So I actually, but also starting from childhood. So I didn't realize this till this weekend, and this is a little crazy. I actually grew up in Appalachia, the very northernmost county of Appalachia. So, and it was all, grew up in a poor area and rural area, and a lot of similar ties to what you see in Appalachia in terms of people are very drawn to their land and to nature, and so I think that to me probably started also that sort of interest in what's around me and my surroundings, and lands and uses and such. Although that being said, I wanted to get out of there and move to cities, when I went to college and coming to San Francisco. But I think when I went to college, I started out in engineering, and then I realized I still liked, the natural sciences, and I switched to geology. But I was at the University of Pennsylvania. There was very little geology. It was very hard to get the classes in. And so then I switched to biology, and I focused a little more on math and evolutionary biology, kind of looking more towards, this is the late 90s, kind of mid to late 90s, looking more towards pharmaceutical and genomics and stuff that was just emerging at that time. But I always had an interest in population genetics and ecology as well. So I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, like natural sciences, liked biology. I ended up graduating in 2001 and getting a job on Wall Street with a management consulting firm. Actually, it was 2000. And that went bust because everything changed in the world at that point in time. And then 9/11 happened, and I moved out to San Francisco kind of right before 9/11, just for 6 months. And I ended up working at a pharmaceutical company first. And I pretty much realized that, that wasn't really what I wanted to do. That wasn't the side of it that I liked. Like, getting back to those roots of like, why did I want to be a geologist initially? Why did I really like the ecology side of the biology degree? And I saw this position for, an analyst with my former business partner, Lori Heater. And so I applied for that job, just thinking, hey, why not? And got that job. And I actually had the job in Wall Street just got deferred, and I ended up just not going back to it. But that was 2002, I think early 2002, that I ended up getting the job in environmental consulting with Lori. And it just seemed like, hey, this is consulting, which I was going to do anyway, but it's more on the ecology and the biology and the natural science side. And thought, let's try this out while I'm out here on the West Coast. And that was 21 years ago. So here I am.
That's wonderful. I love the contrast in your respective experiences and what led you to the field. It's so different, like with, Susanne growing up in your household, and Tania, it's just like, oh, I know I want to do this, and kind of like, not a complete linear path, but like always like towing on that line and having like, would you say mathematical biology?
Yeah. I mean, that was my focus at Penn, and that could take me in any direction, right? Like it could take me onto management consulting and being really technical on the business side. It could take me pharmaceuticals, obviously at that point, like the Human Genome Project was just coming out, something I was super interested in, or could take me into pharmaceuticals, or ultimately where I landed, in environmental consulting.
Yeah. So I imagine it's really difficult for college students to be like, where do I go? What do I do with this?
Yeah. And part of it is maybe you don't need to have the answer. Like my advice to people is like, you don't necessarily have to have the answer. Like, again, if you study a couple things you really like, and, my parents always pushed us towards math and science because they felt like that's where you're going to get a job, like not so much an English major, but unless you go to law school, I guess. But, it was kind of studying these different things and then just having the ability to feel it out, just by chance. Like I didn't even know about environmental consulting when I was at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. But, as I kind of the circumstances that happened with 9/11 and getting deferred and the, the economy at the time in the early 2000s, just kind of gave me the opportunity to like mix it up and look for something else and see what I liked. And, and that's how I landed where I did.
And with that being said, so each of you talking about your interest and passion for the environmental field, and now you are principals and co-owners of Panorama. And so I think, Tania, maybe start with you on this one. And then for Susanne, is what led you to wanting to own a business and being interested in operating and owning your own business?
Yeah. So our stories are a little different because I actually started Panorama with Lori in 2011. And then Susanne ended up joining on when Lori retired in 2019. And so, but in both, there's similarities in both cases, because even when Lori and I started Panorama, we were kind of building something off of something that already existed. We started Panorama as an acquisition, essentially, of our unit of this company called RMT, which Lori got involved in because she had a company before that called MHA, a really small consultancy based in San Mateo, that she sold to RMT in 2007. And so I think as I was working with Lori and MHA from 2000, early 2002 through 2007 to 2011, I was, quickly kind of learning consulting, and I was finding that I was, had like kind of natural leadership abilities, and I was managing projects, and I was doing really well, and I was, and I was growing so much that I was like, at some point I was like, I can have my own company, like I can do this, and then I didn't really have in mind what specifically the timing was on, like would I jump and start my own company or what? But it was more like suddenly I got thrown a circumstance that just was amazing and like very unusual, but just like super lucky. And so basically in 2011, we were with the company RMT, which is a large Midwestern company. And they were an engineering firm, and they were also EPC. They were building wind and solar, and they were owned by a utility in the Midwest called Alliant. And at the time, there was just also like the second kind of shift in economics and recession and such, from 2008 on. And by around 2011, RMT basically, Alliant wanted to divest RMT, and they sold off the units of RMT to TRC. But our unit had a conflict because a lot of our projects were with the California Public Utilities Commission, and TRC was working directly for the utilities. And so they basically said, well, we can take all your units, but we can't take those ladies. and so Lori and I just kind of looked at each other and were like, they need to do something with us. And why not go back to being a small woman-owned business? Let's do this together. We can move it to San Francisco. We've got some staff. We had about $2 million in backlog. We had small staff. We had like 5 people at that point because it had contracted a little bit. And so we just, from the course of, I think I talked about this in our last podcast, but, this all came up around like Halloween. And by, New Year's, we were started as Panorama. We did everything in those 2 months, like, branded, built built all the company, all the templates, all the accounting, like everything. And then just started up as Panorama. And I feel like it just kind of dropped on me. And it was a great way that, we already had a business. It was an acquisition, so we could take the history. We knew what we were doing. It was just an incredible opportunity for me that most people probably would never get, because it was a lot of that just ended up being by chance. And then having, someone like Lori, who was kind of my mentor and then became my business partner, there too, who'd done it before, to be able to build this up. So it's been over a decade now. Panorama celebrates our 11th anniversary on 11/11 of this year. So.
I love it. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was like 4 times I was going to mention 11/11. And before we go to Susanne, Tania, why did Lori and you choose the name Panorama Environmental?
I chose the name Panorama. There's a road up. So if you go on the backside of Twin Peaks in San Francisco, there's a road up the back called Panorama Boulevard, I believe. And one of my friends lives way at the top there. And actually, we're working on a project now with Sutro Tower, so kind of cool. But there's a road that goes all the way up the backside of Twin Peaks called Panorama Boulevard. And I remember just seeing the sign, driving up to my friend's house and being like, that's a great name for an environmental consulting firm or a company, environmental company, because it's kind of like Panorama, has that sort of broad, it means like a broad view, like a big picture view, but it's also got those, sort of aesthetic qualities. And so it just felt right. And I brought it up to Lori and she was like, yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Yeah. It only took you guys 2 months-ish to launch an entire business.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of thought of the name before this opportunity all came up. I drove up there before that and was like, that would be a great name for a company. And then, when Susanne and I, so basically Lori and I, had Panorama, and then Lori was, when she retired, she sold off her half of the shares, and Susanne and I split those, each taking half. And I ended up purchasing mine through an LLC called Starview, which is actually one of the other roads up there. So it was just kind of funny. It became.
So I feel like we can all predict maybe what your next business venture would be. It could be, a road that leads to Sutro Tower or something. But,
yes. Well, basically just look there and there's a bunch of view roads and it's one of those. But I like Starview because that was then like an even bigger picture, like
it is. Could be the biggest.
Attention. Yeah.
Like the James Webb Telescope.
Panorama is 25% owned by Starview.
Got it. And Susanne, how were you attracted to Panorama in the first place? Like how was that first engagement and then your story working up to purchasing the ownership from Lori?
So I joined Panorama through the predecessor company. I was actually introduced to RMT and Tania and Lori through a client that we were both working for at the time when I was in Reno. And he said, I really need to get you guys together. And at the time I had a newborn and I was pregnant with my second. I have my daughters 13 months apart. And I just was in this space in my life where I thought, I need more support. Like I was out in Reno on my own. My family, I have family in the Bay Area, I have family in Los Angeles. But I thought I need to move back to California because being out in Reno on my own with two, little babies was just going to be too much. So I met Lori through this common client, and we kind of connected right away. And then I met Tania, and I was just like, wow, we are really, there's a lot of similarities there. Like we just are really kind of similar on our approach and in terms of just kind of like our tenacity, I think, with trying to solve problems and really address issues. I think we're both pretty tenacious people. So we initially met and I came and joined RMT, and 2 months later it was like, do I have a job here? Like this is definitely not working out the way I thought it was going to. And I was at the time commuting to San Mateo living in Berkeley thinking, I'm not going to be able to do this long term. Like there should be a switch to San Francisco because that was kind of part of what I was planning to happen when I moved. And within, another month from there, I was told by Tania and Lori, we're forming Panorama. Do you want to come with us? And I said, yes, yes, absolutely. And so we got to start off as there was a team of 5 of us. Yeah, so it was Tania and Lori, myself, Aaron, and Corey, our GIS person, and Jeff Smith. And so we kind of came over initially and started Panorama. And then, it was just kind of growing it from the ground up. It was a really great way to see the inside of the company. And really, I fell in love with the place. And when Lori said she was ready to, she's looking to retire and wanted to figure out what to do next and asked me if I wanted to be a business owner, I realized like that was always a life goal of mine. I'm someone who I think I remember being in high school and thinking like, I think I'm going to be a business owner. Like that's just kind of within me. And so, when the opportunity presented itself, I was ready to jump on board.
There's so much, so much like fortuitous events have happened along the way. And I think a big key to this, like there's some luck too, but it's being prepared and recognizing the opportunity. And so I think, with this company that was, getting rid of a division, it could have been like, well, I guess I have to find another job. But instead, you all like, oh no, this is our shot. Yeah. This makes sense. Plug and play. And then, kind of same thing. I think Susanne is recognizing within yourself, like, being open to these things and kind of having that in the back of your mind and making decisions where you're working with good people that you want to work with long-term and want this kind of business partnership relationship with, whether or not it becomes them, but like setting yourself up for that opportunity when and if it arises. So I think that's really cool to recognize as far as, not waiting for someone else to make a decision for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Well, I think it's just spot on. Like, I think what you're saying is just resonates so much. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what resonated for me a lot was the females really advocating for themselves and females really saying, hey, do you want this opportunity? Here's an opportunity, and really communicating about it. And then, as Jessa said, y'all looking inside yourselves and being like, yep, I'm going to shoot my shot. And it's really scary. Like, I'm assuming it's really scary. Was it really scary? What were the feelings?
Yeah. So in 2011, it was a little scary, but I also felt like the way the opportunity presented to ourselves, it wasn't a lot of risk for us. Now, I did have to put up a bunch of our own money to like purchase it from RMT and then to, and then to like basically self-fund, like paying people and operating, for a little bit of time. But, we had unlike other businesses, like we had like backlog coming in and we knew what things were, like we knew what we're getting, we knew how to sustain that. So it kind of like tamped down the risk a little bit. And it always felt like we're not going into debt doing this, but, chances are with going in with like a couple people and like little tiny manageable size at the time. And this backlog, like the risk of us losing stuff, losing money, losing ourselves is not great. And it also felt like, I would tell myself, well, if it all went bust, like I could just get a job at like TRC or whatever, because they liked us, they just couldn't take the company. So, we just kind of, for me, it was kind of like, it was scary in that there was a lot to figure out, but it also felt like, but we know how to do this because we've been doing this, and having Lori too was great because she had run a small business. So it's like, she had run MHA for, from 83 to 2007. So that really helped kind of tamp down the risk a lot.
And I think when I was ready to become a business owner, I talked with my mom about it. And my mom's very risk averse. She's like a financial person, she's basically like an accountant type of brain. And I showed her what I was doing. And she's like, I can't talk to you about this because it scares me. She's like, I cannot handle this. And I was like, okay, I just was like, okay, I won't talk to you about it then, but I'm not going to not do it. And to me, there was this aspect of it's like once I had woken up that part of me, that's like, yes, I want to be a business owner. I know this is a life goal. I know this is what I want to do. I couldn't put it back to bed. And it's like, it would be a death of my soul to not do it. So like the risk of financial loss or something is like, when you put it within those, from that perspective, it's like you can't not do it. I couldn't, it really was something where it's like, I didn't see a path to not doing it.
And it was the interesting thing too, was I guess there was the second time of buying out half of Lori's shares in 2019. And for me, again, it felt like a little bit of risk again, but it was interesting because there was points where Lori talked to me and she was like, oh, just, I could buy out her shares and be full owner of Panorama and do it by myself, and because she and I were half before. And I was kind of like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to do this by myself, And and it was really kind of hard to think about, all right, well, do you sell to a big company? Do you, what is that going to mean? And I was like, I don't know, that just doesn't fit with like what we've built and who we have and how we're operating. And it's like, that just didn't feel right, And then I talked to someone who owns another company, environmental consulting firm. I won't say his name, but he was just incredible. We went for a long walk, and he was incredibly insightful. And he was like, having a business partner who would, buy out half of Lori's shares and you take the other half of Lori's shares is going to give you that ability to have someone who's going to do this with you, and that's probably the best way to go with, when I was describing kind of who we are and where we are and how we operate the business and how I didn't want to do it all by myself. And so, it helped me just really get this like sort of, like vision of like, yes, like, doing this with Susanne is absolutely 100% the best decision of all the options on the board. Like, because we are really aligned in how we think. We have different skills. We bring different skills to the table. Her as having, those shares as well, brings her into a role similar to me in terms of managing the company and staff and projects and building the company further. And then also that we're roughly the same age. So we're kind of aligned in overall goals. Because again, I only bring that up because, Lori and I were 18 years apart in age. So obviously we had different, trajectories, where Susanne and I are like a year apart in age. So, it feels like the decisions are the same point in our career, and decisions are the same point for long-term, that can align really nicely. And I think it did allow us to grow the company bigger because there were two of us, and then we hired a director recently who's got, 25 years experience, Megan, and she's amazing. And it like added even more ability, to grow.
Yeah. I love that your decision-making that both of you have talked about is not just financial, and it's not just the financial risks, but you've discussed the investment of your emotional and social value, the value of your soul. Where do I want to spend? Where do I invest my time and my resources? I mean, as consultants, you sell time basically, which I hope we can change that one day. I would love to not be selling time, but, and maybe Panorama can clarify what exactly it is that they sell. But I can vouch for being a part-time employee at Panorama that the culture and what you guys have put together as a duo, a dynamic duo, has been very attractive, and it has a more holistic work environment. The employees are so engaged, and you're growing so much, and it's growing so organically that it's going well. It's going right. And you two being the leaders, it's the reason why it's going well and it's going right. But that said, why don't y'all tell us a little bit about your culture and what it is that you sell and what you think are the key points that gives you a competitive advantage over other environmental consulting firms in the industry?
Yeah. You want to go ahead?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the key aspects of our culture, we actually have some guiding principles we've come up with. I think that the number one is communication. It kind of everything comes back to communication. I was actually talking with another employee, with Rita, this morning about some of the other ones. It's like, wow, they all kind of link back to communication once you look at them. But it starts with, from our perspective, it really starts with having this open communication policy. It's expected that people communicate with each other, that we're talking and able to express our needs, and then also able to mentor and train each other. Like, that's all through communication. And then spreading that out to the client, bringing that communication out to them so that it's clear where we are in the process and what our growth is, what our trajectory is for the project. And then we also have collaboration as a really key aspect of our culture too. We believe that the best ideas come through collaboration, that it's not just one thing that one person said or one thing that another person said, but through the collaboration, it's like you have that third party that kind of comes into the room. That's the collaboration, that it's like not really an idea that any one person had. And that's really like an exciting moment and something that's really important to our culture. You want to talk about some of the other ones?
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I guess it ties into part of the question was, what do we sell? And, I think Panorama, we're CEQA NEPA consultants. There's a lot of CEQA NEPA consultants out there. I think what we sell and that makes us maybe a little different is that I always try to pitch us as we're strategic environmental consultants. And I think what we sell is that expertise and that ability to solve problems, from the start. So not just write a NEPA document, write a CEQA document, but working with clients early on to figure out how do you get through this whole process. And it comes back to that communication, that guiding principles, that there's no problem we can't solve. What we're bringing is basically like, look, we can just write your document for you, but we can also help you plan early on so that, that you're going to meet your schedules. You're going to meet, your on date for your project. You're going to meet, you're going to reduce certain permitting fees because we thought about it earlier and we worked with your engineers to figure out a way that works that avoids like all this permitting that you would need otherwise. That we're there at the table, helping solve problems early and coordinating all the entities involved in environmental planning. So, we've had examples recently with solar projects, geothermal projects, where, it was kind of like, even looking at Sutra Tower, just looking at these projects and saying, okay, here's what's going on. And, here's the options of what you can do, not just a task that we're going to do. We're going to help you figure out what you can do and what's the best way to do it. And we work to train our staff to think that way as well. And I think that clients really value that our service is not just doing a task of something they have to do, but that we're taking them through this process in a way that meets their goals, even though they have to do it.
I agree. I want this.
That's what I kept thinking, sorry, Laura, as you're talking about this, I was like, oh, it's almost like their problem, the client's problem becomes your problem. And it's that tenacity that you both share to figure that out and be like, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Last night, Susanne and I got on we were just checking in because we've got a whole bunch of proposals and like one going out today. And, but there's this one project that we're working on and I'm not going to divulge too many details, but basically there was some confusion about what the project is and where it is. And she and I just got on a call. It just came up. And, she pulls up like the picture of the project and we were just talking through like together, like, okay, like, well, if they do this, then it means this. If they do this, then it means that, and we sat and talked for 45 minutes. At the end of it, we were just like, okay, here's like the two options, they have, right? And it was just, that kind of like, we can go back to then where this client didn't know what the right, solution is. And we can go back and be like, we kind of talked through this and we got some clarity and here's your options,
I can also vouch that I want this to resonate with the industry as a whole, with the profession of the environmental profession as a whole. It benefits us all if environmental professionals, whether they're consultants or a part of the organization, are engaged early in the project planning process, because you can identify these options. And the permitting pathway on the environmental side is crucial to your financial pro forma, to your commercial operation dates, to all of your project development planning. And I've seen it time and time again where developers make mistakes where they engage the environmental professional or the land entitlement expert at the time of preparing the technical reports and getting those permits instead of in the project planning process. And things blow up. There's mitigation we didn't anticipate or things we could have avoided that we didn't avoid. And now maybe we need to go redo engineering. And what I've really learned in my tenure as a professional, it's just a risk management strategy if you're a developer, hire an environmental professional full-time. If you don't want to hire an environmental professional full-time, hire an environmental consulting firm early so that they can help you project plan. And to that end, one project I'm working on with you guys at Panorama, you've built that relationship so strongly and deeply with a solar developer that they've come to you and said, I want to build a solar project. Will you design it and engineer it? And so environmental consulting firms also have this opportunity to put a whole team together and really help design, I think this engineer is going to figure this problem out. I think the gen-tie should be over here, or if you reroute it over here, it's going to have a less environmental impact. And isn't that the overall goal of our profession, is to be that good where we can help development that needs to be done, but also in a way that lessens the environmental impact from the start.
And can save millions down the road.
Millions.
On a past project, they were looking at the biologist, which wasn't under us, had said, hey, you need a 4.4 permit, and it's 114 acres that you need to compensate, and it would have been like 14 million, and there was no mitigation banks. And then kind of looked at it and was like, wait, what if we just do, the only thing we're touching here is like these roads? What if we just do nationwide? And I met with the district office in Sacramento of the Army Corps, and they were like, yeah, let's do 78 nationwides, and there's zero mitigation because you don't tip anything. And it was like, okay, just give you 14 million, that like pays for us.
Can I get a cut of that? Can I get a little kickback of that 14 mil that you saved? Well, I just think that this would really uplift the profession and the industry in general, is if we looked for those cost saving strategies, because it is a massive complaint from developers that, I can't build in California. It's too expensive to build in California. It's like, well, it doesn't have to be, not all the time.
Right. And I think it's also looking at this, as I remember Lori would always say, this is a team sport. It's like, this really is something where it's like, it takes all the team and kind of putting our ego at the door. Like, we don't have to individually have the right answer, but come up with a better solution as a team and be able to look at things. It's really that like cradle to grave kind of perspective of not just I'm spending this much on environmental today, but like if we invest in our environmental at the front, we're going to save when we're in operations, because the cost of doing these things operationally, it's going to add up for the life of the project. So it's really kind of your upfront investment to getting the right team on to do that evaluation and really get you the best kind of outcome that you can from a mitigation standpoint.
And you're recognizing that they, partly like the sort of good reputation that builds for them.
Yes.
So, we've got another solar developer that we're working with, and we're doing, the construction monitoring at this point. But, that developer has like engaged us and given us, so much ability to like help them do the right thing and like, follow every reg and communicate with the BLM. And now they have a great reputation for what they're doing and building. And that goes a long way because they've got other projects coming up.
And your reputation. So it's obviously really important in the environmental industry that we maintain really good relationships. That's why AEP is so crucial. For me personally, in my profession, I know, like Susanne said, this isn't about me. And I also know I don't have all the answers. But I always say, like in my interviews or when I'm engaging people, that I am a member of AEP. And if I don't have the answers, someone does. And we are a very open organization. We love to collaborate. We love to help. Somebody somewhere is going to have an idea and we can figure this out together. Absolutely. So I find that maintaining relationships in the industry and sharing and having that open communication, as you all have mentioned, is crucial to our industry as a whole being elevated. And what I've also really liked when we interview consulting firms and, professionals in public agencies, the relationships that we have that are based on collaboration means I can call up a regulator and bounce an idea off of them early and be like, is this a non-starter? Or what is your hope and dream for this particular area? Like if you had all the resources in the world and money and time and staff was not an issue, what would be your dream for your jurisdiction? And then you go, okay, well, we've got a commercial developer over here, and we've got, NGOs over here and community groups and stakeholders over here, and they all want this thing. So if you can design your project to be of beneficial use to that thing, to that idea, then we've just like accomplished wins all around. And I find that environmental professionals are really good at doing that because of the interconnectedness of all of it. And I did want to highlight that Panorama is, I think, unique in that, and I hope all developers do this, where they go, please design my project for me. the start. I think that might be the future of the environmental profession. On that note, what is Panorama's dream or future vision for your company and for the environmental profession as a whole? Where do you want this all to go?
More tools to more technical tools to do our work. Like, one of the things we're still struggling with is like Word versions of stuff. I'll just say that word. I would love to see us utilizing all of this like technology forward that exists that isn't being used right now. Because, even today there was like a version issue on a project, and it's just our current tools of collaborating. They're getting better, but they still aren't great. Where you have to email documents and multiple versions of things. Like, I think this industry could go to a place where, even data collection, monitoring, like a place where that technology that exists could help us do our jobs way better.
And it comes back to it all being rooted in collaboration. So this being a team sport, when we're working on these documents, there can be 40 people at some point touching this. Then you get, the attorneys, then you have the client, and you have, all the people within our office and all the different technical experts. And I mean, it actually could be a lot more than 40. I was just throwing out a number, but it's when you have that many people who need to touch a document, like, to me, that tells me that should be something that's like living in the cloud. That's like this live document, because it's not meant to be something that just one person is holding at a time. And really, I think it's like being able to improve that collaboration using technology would be a great benefit to the industry.
Like some kind of platform, because this whole work that we do is a process that has so many different components, and there's accountability that has to be built in, and there's documents, and there's versions, and there's legal, steps that have to be taken, and the box check that it was done right. And there's so much opportunity to take those technology tools and, have a platform that helps us do our job better that doesn't exist now. And I mean, folks use Box. We're working with the Forest Service and they use Box, but honestly, like the version problems are happening with that too. So that's just a repository. We need a platform.
So that is putting that out there to anyone listening who is interested in technology and coding and apps and also serving the environmental industry. Please create this. And I'm laughing as you guys are saying this. I can just picture, a Word doc with 500 initials behind it and, a save as date that doesn't match the last like stamp date. And yes.
There should be a better way, but I don't know. We're still struggling with that. Same as I was when I was doing this for 10 years ago and 15 years ago and 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people will find that very relatable, unfortunately. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. We'll get into our wrap-up rapid five, but just wanted to take a moment to thank you. And you're both such great role models and inspirations for environmental leaders and business owners and women in business. And thank you for sharing your story with us today. I wish we could talk to you for a few more hours about everything you've done in your company culture and the good you do in the world. But for now, we'll let you guys get back to doing that good. So quick wrap up rapid five. And I'll start with Susanne. You'll answer one first, and then I'll flip and Tania will answer one first, and we'll kind of ping pong back and forth a little bit. So Susanne, what is your favorite daily habit?
It is taking my kids for a walk to school. I love being able to walk them to school and have that time with them.
Oh, Tania, your favorite daily habit?
In the morning.
What?
Cup of coffee in the morning.
Oh, that's a great. That's the little things that get your day going.
That's the only thing I do consistently.
Okay, so we'll start with Tania. What are 3 things you'd bring to a deserted island?
All right. I would bring sunscreen because my husband doesn't let anyone go outside anywhere without sunscreen. I would bring my computer because, let's just be real, right? And I don't know if this comes with it or separate, but like the internet would have to come too.
We'll accept it. Susanne.
I would bring a multi-tool because then you get like multiple things in one. Because it's like you never know what you're going to find and what you'll need to use that for. I would bring some sort of a tarp or something that I can make shelter out of. And I would bring, it's kind of a common joke amongst our friend group that we bring Chris Salem because he's like MacGyver. He can make anything out of anything.
I love it.
See, that's why I want the internet and the computer, because you can just look it up. Any problem you have, you'll be able to look it up on the island.
Well, I laugh. I'm like, this is why you guys are business partners, right? The complementary. You have the computer, the internet, sunscreen. Suzanne's like, okay, I got the tarp, I got the tools. Like, we have that. Now we can Google it. So, okay. So this one, start with Susanne. What is your favorite environmental policy?
My favorite environmental policy, I'd say the Clean Water Act. I mean, I feel like we're still dealing with it. It goes all over the place, but it's something that I still kind of love. I love that it's all over the place and that it's always changing and people are always like reinterpreting it. So that one's probably my favorite.
And I would probably say historic preservation. I just think that it is important. It's kind of funny because now stuff built in the 70s is historic. But it's really important for preserving our background. And just when you start going into projects that involve historic preservation, it's always really interesting. You always come across cool handwritten letters and photos. And so I like working in that area.
Love it. All right, Tania, what is your favorite flora or fauna?
I would say owls.
Oh, Laurel, that's her spirit animal.
That's my job.
They guide us.
Yeah.
Tania. Yeah. Even the burrowing owl.
Even the burrowing owl has a message for us.
Yes.
Shaking because he made his burrow right next to a train track.
They're used to it by now. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, Susanne.
I like those little salamanders. I mean, they're kind of fun little guys. They crawl in all over the places. Never know where you're going to find them.
And if like a bird gets them, they just lose their tail and run away.
It's all strategy.
I love it. Okay. And then finish this sentence. So Susanne, finish this sentence. Wouldn't it be cool if?
Wouldn't it be cool if we all got to work in a place doing jobs that we loved?
Yes. Tania.
Wouldn't it be cool if there was no such thing as stress?
Love it. Thank you, ladies, so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being awesome. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to be updated when new episodes are released and leave us a review to let us know what you think. It also really helps us to share the podcast with others who may enjoy learning about the environmental industry. If you want to submit a shout out or any feedback, please send an email or voice memo to podcast@califaep.org. The email again is podcast with an S, podcast@califaep.org.